18. San Diego, California, February 3rd, 2004. Late morning. The three of them left the Safari Lodge behind, stepping back into the bright light of Main Street. The plaza's hum was steady, the faint thrum of maintenance carts, gulls circling lazily overhead. Rivera lit at her usual pace, at her usual clipped pace, heels clicking softly against the stone. Ethan walked just behind her, while Dr. Wilson lingered a few steps closer. His mind was his mind still wrestling with the weight of the ton-seat history they'd spoken inside. After a pause, Wilson's voice carried. "Miss Rivera," he said evenly. "Earlier, you mentioned something called the Flying Reptile Cleanup back in 2001. What exactly was that?" Rivera didn't break stride, but her expression hardened into its familiar professional cast. "Late July of 2001," she began. "Not long after the Kirby boy was retrieved from Isla Sorna, three pteranodons broke free from the island's aviary. They didn't linger on Sorna. They rode the air currents north and eventually crossed into British Columbia." Wilson's eyebrows lifted. "Canada? That's thousands of miles. That's halfway across the North American continent." "They followed fishing boats, migratory paths, even coastlines," Rivera explained. "They're far more intelligent than most want to admit. By the time signs were confirmed, they had already disrupted logging cabins, and fishing towns. That was when United Genesis intervened. They couldn't risk the exposure. He even folded his arms, smirked faintly. So they called in you." Rivera allowed herself the smallest nod. "I was working as a private security contractor then. UGE gave me a Chinook, two Blackhawks, and a specialized squad. My assignment was clear: track the pteranodons, neutralize the risk, and bring them back alive. Took coordination, long nights, and more patience than I like to admit, but we contained all three." Wilson glanced at her, tone clipped. "And no civilians ever knew." "Exactly," Rivera said. "The operation was quiet, sufficient, and UGE was impressed. That mission secured my permanent post within their security division. I rose quickly, and by 2002, I was trusted enough to handle sensitive projects. A year later, I was tasked to coordinate with the UNDOC, which," she said pointedly, "is why I'm here with you now." They passed a set of staff-only gates, steel fences glinting under the late morning sun. Rivera stopped briefly, gesturing northward. "For the record, those same three pteranodons are alive and well. We call them the first generation. They've been transferred here to the sanctuary, and once construction on the aviary is finished, they'll have a permanent, secure enclosure. Lesson learned from Sorna's mistakes." Wilson studied her face. "And you're certain an Avery can hold them this time?" Rivera's gaze was unwavering. "It will. The structure is nearly complete. Steel trusses, reinforced mesh, redundant containment systems. It will be one of the most secure facilities in the sanctuary." Ethan let out a low whistle. "Impressive. Though you'll forgive Nathan if he's not reassured easily." Wilson said nothing for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "And what of the past, Ethan? Mistakes made with the Tunsi, with Sorna, with Nublar. Do you intend to simply cover those over with higher walls?" He even hesitated, his voice dropping as I walked away from earshot of passing staff. "Nathan, please don't bring that up around Angie or Lucas. They don't know. They don't need to know what Injun did to the Tunsi back in the 80s. Not now." His tone carried both concern and a note of guilt. Bolton's expression softened slightly. Though he didn't answer, Rivera resumed her stride, her tone crisp, redirecting them. "Regardless, there's something else you should see. Program EGE has been refined for several years, one that represents the next stage of animal management." Wilson's stomach tightened at her words. "And what would that be?" Rivera glanced between him and Ethan before replying, her voice almost cold. "The Ibris Project. Integrated Behavioral Raptor Intelligence Study. If you want to understand where UGE is really heading, that's your next stop." The words hung heavy in the air as they continued down the service path. Sunlight cut in sharp shadows against the fencing around them. Chapter 19. The group stepped through the reinforced double doors into the Creation Lab's hatchery, the heart of the facility. The change in atmosphere was immediate. Gone was the Safari Lodge warmth and resort like architecture, replaced with sleek metal walls, sterilized flooring, and an omnipresent clinical hum from the machinery. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and recycled air, punctuated by the soft beep in the monitors. Rows of incubation pods stretched along either side of the main corridor, glass-fronted chambers lit with an ethereal glow, each one holding eggs in various stages of development. Some shells were pale and smooth, others speckled, while a few trembled faintly on the verge of hatching. Stainless steel workstations stood nearby, neatly organized with surgical instruments, pipettes, and specialized nutrient containers labeled with barcodes and engine insignia. Behind large observation pans, white-coated technicians hunched over microscopes or tapped on computer consoles, their movements efficient and precise. Angelina groaned, folding her arms as she looked around. Ugh, okay, first things first, where the hell did that lawyer guy go? The one in the suit always pretended to look important. Vera walked briskly ahead of the group in her polished boots, slowed and turned back. Her silver blonde hair gleamed under the lab's overhead lights, her expression cool but slightly amused. That would be Martin Jackson, and he wasn't just a lawyer, he's a legal agent that represented the law firm that United Genesis contracted. He was called back to Seattle on urgent business. Angelina muttered. Sounds like Balin to me. For quickly, adding with a smirk. Figures, suits are all the same. Rivera arched an eyebrow, but said nothing further. Before the silence could settle too long, Angelina piped up again. And what about that Morales guy? Haven't seen him either. Did he run off too? Rivera's gaze sharpened. Morales is an Indian field liaison. He was called back to the Palo Alto headquarters earlier this morning. These are not absences of convenience. They're necessary. Some matters in our work cannot wait. Angelina rolled her eyes. Fine, fine. It just seems a little convenient to me that people keep disappearing. Lucas, however, wasn't listening to her. He was transfixed by one of the incubation pods. Are those? His voice trailed off in awe. Vera followed his gaze and gave the faintest of a smile. Hint of a smile. Yes, Velociraptor embryos. Part of the Ibris Project. Integrated Behavioral Raptor Intelligence Study. They are to be raised here, with close observation, conditions that ensure their well-being. Nathan Wilson froze mid-step, his eyes narrowing. Raptors. The word left his mouth like a warning. Rivera didn't flinch. Yes, raptors. Back in 1992, Dr. Henry Wu, chief Engine's chief geneticist for Isla Nublar, noted their hidden intelligence far beyond that of other clone species. By the time of the Isla Nublar incident in '93, their abilities were evident. They solved problems, they communicated, they learned. Lucas leaned forward eagerly, his reflection hovering over the glowing glass. So, they were really that smart? Rivera inclined her head. Smarter than cetaceans? Smarter than primates. Years later, Dr. Alan Grant, after surviving his own encounters, confirmed what Wu had suspected. Studying North American velociraptors, he concluded they possessed a resonation chamber in their skulls, a natural instrument. It enabled them to produce a complex vocalization language. Nathan interjected, his voice grave. Language implies thought, though thought implies structure. You're not talking about animals anymore. You're talking about something that operates outside instinct. Dr. Grant's colleague, Billy Brennan, engineered a prototype chamber in 2001. Rivera continued, unfazed. On Isla Sorna, it was successfully used to communicate with a raptor pack. That incident was overseen by Engine Security Division. Her lips thinned briefly. I was part of that oversight. Angelina groaned dramatically. So what? You're telling me these baby lizards are like genius supervillains with walkie-talkies in their heads? Real comforting. Can't wait to see those in the petting zoo. Wilson turned to her, uncharacteristically sharp. Angelina, do not make light of this. He pivoted toward Rivera. This this entire project, it's teetering on the edge of something deeply unethical. Do you understand what happens when you put highly intelligent predators in an environment they weren't meant to be? Zoocosis, repetitive pacing, aggression, psychosis, a brain that knows it's caged. His voice rose slightly. And in raptors, creatures that thrive on social structure and coordinated hunting, you're inviting disaster. Rivera's jaw set, her eyes meeting him coldly. With respect, Dr. Wilson, that's why the Ibris Project exists. These raptors are not being raised for show. They are being studied, monitored. Their health, mental and physical, is our top priority. This stage, they are infants, and they are happy. They are healthy. Wilson let out a slow, skeptical breath, his expression dark. Meanwhile, Lucas was staring into the pod, his hands pressed against the glass, eyes wide with something between fascination and reverence. Angelina noticed and wrinkled her nose. Ugh, Lucas. Seriously, you look like you're in love with those things. That's disgusting. Lucas shot at her a brief glare. You don't get it. They're not just animals. There's something more. Wilson's face tightened further at the boy's words, but he said nothing, retreating instead into a troubled silence. Rivera finally broke it, her voice brisk and authoritative once again. Enough talk. The next phase will make things clearer. The infants are due for observation. You'll see them shortly in the nursery wing. Chapter 12. As the group moved deeper into the creation lab toward the temporary enclosure of the juvenile raptors, Lucas glanced at Wilson. Dr. Wilson, he asked, you ever wondered of the lysine contingency from the Isla Nublar incident back in '93? Wilson gave a short nod. Yes, though of course I wasn't present at the time. Lucas pressed further. Then you know how badly it failed? Wilson adjusted his glasses, his tone measured. During Jurassic Park's planning in the late 1980s and early 90s, Dr. Wu engineered a genetic modification that prevented the dinosaurs from producing lysine, an essential amino acid. To survive, the animals required a daily supply administered through their food by the park's veterinary staff. The idea was simple. If the if the dinosaurs ever escaped confinement, they would quickly weaken, slip into a coma within a week, and die. He shook his head, but the contingency was flawed from the start. By 1994, during the Nublar cleanup operations, engineers discovered that the animals had adapted. Like all organic vertebrate life, they found ways to cysticize or obtain lysine on their own. On Isla Sorna, the herbivores fed on lysine-enriched plants. The carnivores, in turn, consumed the herbivores. This nutrient chain rendered the entire failsafe useless. It explains how both island populations managed to survive long after the park's collapse, though officially, the full details remain unconfirmed. Lucas leaned forward. What about the gender control system? How exactly did that work? Wilson gave a dry laugh. That contingency was even worse than a lysine plan. Engine disabled the genes responsible for producing the hormones needed to develop male gonads. All embryos began as female, and without these hormones, none could mature into males. It was a measure meant to prevent breeding and overpopulation. He paused before Adam. But Sorna was a different matter. Ingen allows natural breeding here, and more importantly, they introduced amphibian DNA to fill genomic gaps. Some species, particularly the West African reed frog, are capable of changing sex in response to imbalanced populations. Once introduced to the dinosaurs, it was inevitable that certain species would switch genders, mate, and reproduce. Rivera interjected smoothly. That was then. Things are very different now. United Genesis no longer relies on amphibian DNA or on incomplete genomes at all. Our current sequences are fully mapped, 100% accurate, and if gaps must be filled, the substitution comes from archosaurian relatives, modern reptiles or birds, not amphibians. Ethan, who had been silent until now, spoke with a trace of defensiveness. Genetics is my specialty, but the researchers have pushed far beyond Hammond's crude methods. They can tailor traits with precision. For example, hydration efficiency with Arabian gazelle DNA, less aggressive and more tolerant behavioral patterns of chimpanzees or bonobos. Increased immune systems against pathogens with DNA from Greenland sharks. Increased longevity with the genetics of the leatherback sea turtle. Social cohesion through elements from bottlenose dolphins. Greater agility and maneuverability modeled from the common bat. Physical strength enhanced by the rhinoceros beetle. Adaptability to confined space from the long-eared owl. Even resilience and defensive durability inspired by the saltwater crocodile. The possibilities are almost limitless. Wilson's brow furrowed. And therein lies the danger. You speak of possibilities as though you are designing tools. But these are living creatures. Layering traits from across the animal kingdom raises not only ethical concerns, but the real risk of creating unstable, maladaptive organisms. Zoocoxis in captivity was already a problem for Hammond's animals. What you're describing could make it worse. The tension hung for a moment before Rivera stepped between them, her tone crisp and authoritative. Gentlemen, this is neither the time nor the place for this debate. You'll have your answers soon enough. She gestured toward the end of the corridor, because in just a moment you'll be seeing the raptors themselves. The group passed through a final set of reinforced glass doors. Sight of sterile brightness of the lab gave way to a quieter, almost nursery-like chamber. Heat lamps glowed above a padded pen where four small creatures huddled together beneath the warmth. Their movements were quick and bird-like, heads darting, tails swaying with a subtle balance that betrayed their predatory lineage, even at such a young age. Rivera gestured toward the enclosure. Dr. Wilson, children, allow me to introduce the next phase of the Ibris program. The hatchlings chirped softly, their tiny claws scratching against the enclosure's chlorine as they tested their legs, their eyes bright and unblinking, following the humans with uncanny focus. This one, Rivera said, pointing to the smallest but most alert of the group, is Clarissa. She was the first to hatch, and she shows signs of assertive behavior. Our geneticists predict she will emerge as the dominant female, the leader. She shifted her hand to the others in turn. That is Watson, inquisitive and bold. The red marked one is Scarlet, spirited but cautious, and the last, Gamma, more reserved, but already the most cooperative of our handlers. Lucas leaned closer to the glass, his breath fogging the surface. They're smaller than I thought. Vera smiled faintly, for now. Clarissa has a distinctive grayish blue skin with an iridescent blue stripe running horizontally from her eye socket down to the tip of her tail. This unique coloration came from the spliced DNA of a black-throated monitor lizard. Watson was teal colored with no prominent stripes, as well as a more avian appearance, pronounced nasal crest, bird-like pupils, and mohawk of quills. Scarlet had a very similar build to Watson, but Scarlet had yellowish orange skin, dark blue, tire like stripes, and a distinctive scar on the left side of her face, and didn't actually have the mohawk of quills like Watson. The last raptor was Gamma, who had the most distinctive, vibrant green of the pack, with thin, dark green vertical stripes running down her back and flanks. Her coloration was a result of spliced green iguana DNA from the Galapagos Islands. Gamma was also very similar in body appearance to Clarissa, but slightly smaller. Wilson stepped forward, adjusting his glasses as he studied the young raptors. They're sleek. Scale hides gleamed under the heat lamps, patterns of stripes, and faint mottling already distinct. He cannot deny the stir of work, the sight of velociraptors, alive, not as fossils in stone, but living, breathing animals at the very dawn of their lives. Extraordinary, he murmured. Then, after a beat, his tone hardens, and yet deeply troubling. You say these animals are healthy, even content, but I've seen enough in the history of zoology to know quickly that can change. Intelligent predators forced into confinement. It rarely ends well. Rivera's expression remained professional, her voice calm but firm. That's exactly why we're here, Dr. Wilson, to prove otherwise. They are thriving. No signs of stress, no aggression outside of natural play. These raptors are not Hammond's failures. They are something new, something better. Wilson gave a small, skeptical nod. Perhaps, but I've heard such promises before. Beyond the glass, Clarissa chirped and gave a small little snap at Watson, who retreated with a squawk. Already, the hierarchy was forming. The others looked on with a mixture of curiosity and unease. For a moment, the creation lab felt suspended between two worlds, the wonder of discovery and the shadow of everything that had come before. Chapter 21. The Innovation Center, Wilson addressed the civilians. Well then, kids, tomorrow my time here at the San Diego Dinosaur Sanctuary is over. I'll be returning to the dig site in Mongolia. So, if you have any questions, now is the time. Lucas then asked curiously, Doctor, have you ever wondered what the ecosystems look like on Isla Sorna? Wilson nodded. Well then. 1997, just after the San Diego incident, InGen leaked documents on the island's populations. These reports covered Sorna just before the Isla Nublar in 1993, and 4 years before Ludlow and the hunters landed there. He explained, there were only 10 Brachiosaurus and 4 Mamenchisaurus originally, yet both fried after the hurricane. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, both thrive after the hurricane. Brachiosaurus in the lush northern tropics, and Mamenchisaurus in the southern redwood-like forests. Parasaurolophus, with just 13 individuals ranged across both habitats. The relatives were in Monosaurus were less fortunate, with only 4 bred. None sur- it's likely none survived beyond 1997, aside from a skull discovered in the Tyrannosaurus nest by the Indian hunters. Wilson went on. Other herbivores endured. 11 Stegosaurus and 10 Triceratops held their ground. Their phagomizers, plates, and horns likely helped them survive against the predators. 6 Tyrannosaurs lived on Sorna, not counting Jr. The 7th, Roberta, had been transported to Nublar in 1986. Of these, the buck and doe pair established themselves in the redwoods. Meanwhile, Central Sorna saw vicious velociraptors stalking the long grass, while in the tropics, a more avian-like raptor subspecies hunted. All total, just 18 raptors lived before Hurricane Clarissa. Clarified further, Pachycephalosaurus and Gallimimus herds occupied the redwoods, 9 Pachy's, 20 Galleys originally. Some species went unnoticed by visitors, like a herd of 22 Microceratops, which neither the hunters nor Dr. Grant ever documented. As for carnivores, 4 baryonyx, 3 carnivores, and 12 Dilophosaurs were bred. Though their later numbers remain uncertain, Wilson added. Pteranodons flourished, 44 in total, one aggressive territorial strain confined to the aviary on the northeast side of the island, and a larger, more docile population inhabiting the southern coast freely. And of course, Compsognathus were everywhere, from the beaches to the forests, feeding in swarms. Lucas asked, so why do you think prior to the illegal 1999 engine breeding did the Hammond Foundation breed so many dinosaurs, although only 6 were brought to Nublar prior to the 1993 incident? Wilson responded, if it is to be believed, John Hammond intended for more Jurassic Parks had the Nublar incident never happened, like Jurassic Park Europe, likely in the Azores Islands, and Jurassic Park Japan. So some of these dinosaurs were likely intended for these other dinosaur theme parks around the world. Wilson leaned back against the railing, thoughtful. Of course, Isla Sorna today is in the same ecosystem as it was in 1993 or even 1997. The first signs of population collapse began after the introduction of several new species: Spinosaurus, Coryphosaurus, Ankylosaurus, and Ceratosaurus. Their arrival upset the delicate balance that had slowly had slowly taken shape after Hurricane Clarissa. Spinosaurus, in particular, became a top predator, displacing even the Tyrannosaurs from parts of their range. Lucas nodded, eyes bright. So, some of the dinosaurs we never saw in the reports, the ones neither the engine hunters nor Dr. Malcolm's team documented in 97, or Dr. Grant and the Kirbys in 2001. They must have had their niches carved out until then, and once the newcomers appeared, they began to vanish. Wilson finished. Exactly. Ecosystems on an island are fragile. You introduce one large aggressive carnivore, and suddenly everything reshuffles. Brachiosaurs competed with Parasaurolophus or browsing territory. Ankylosaurs challenged Stegosaurs and Trikes for resources. Ceratosaurus added one more predator into the mix. That's why modern surveys of Soren are scarce. It's still restricted, but we know the populations there are far more unstable than they once were. Before Lucas could press further, Angelina reappeared across the hall, arms crossed and an unimpressed look on her face. Are you two seriously still talking about ecosystems? God, this is worse than my biology class, she muttered. I don't need some PTSD flashbacks right now. Lucas blinked. PTSD? Or science? Yeah, she said flatly. Every time my teacher drones on about amino acids or mitochondria, I swear my soul leaves my body. She rolled her eyes, then jerked her thumb toward a glowing platform nearby. Anyway, I found something cooler than your science lecture. It's called the holospace. Wilson glanced over, recognizing the device. Ah, the Innovation Center's full-scale holographic display system. It was designed to give us visitors a sense of an animal's true size. Angelina smirked. Exactly. Watch this. She tapped the control panel, and with a pulse of lights, space filled with a towering hologram, a velociraptor, not the stocky tiger striped. Tiger stripe breed from Ingen's original stock, but rather the sleeker feather fringed avian variety first encountered by Grant and the Kirby family on Sorna in 2001. The hologram raised its head, simple feathers along its forearms, shimmering faintly in projected light, its intelligent eyes flickering across the group. Angelina folded her arms. The male raptor was 5'7", had a mohawk of quills. Sorry about that, folks. And a mohawk of quills on its head, as well as simple proto feathers across its back and forearms, as well as an avian, rigid skull and bird like pupils. The hologram raptor also had darker, muted purple skin, charcoal gray blotchin, a milky horizontal striping from the skull to the tail, and a yellow creamy underbelly. See? Way cooler than talking about herbivore population numbers. Lucas studied the image closely. That's the avian strands. Grant saw those firsthand. The genetics matched the raptor squads. Here probably won't be too different in behavior. Physically, sure, different builds, different patterns, but intelligence. He trailed off, half in awe. Wilson regarded the hologram with quiet unease. Intelligence is a double-edged sword, he murmured, more to himself than anyone. Chapter 22. The control. Oh crap. The control room had a sleek, almost militaristic cutting edge. Its interior look to it. There were several modern desks with a modern, futuristic-esque looks with built-in monitors for staff members. The control room had a helipad on its roof and power controls. The control room also had a map of the Muertes Archipelago, 200 miles west of Costa Rica, Isla Matanceros, Isla Tacano, Isla Pena, Isla Muerta, and Isla Sorna. There was also Isla Nublar, several miles northeast. As for Nublar, it was a separate island and closest to the Central American mainland at the most. There were also several large rectangular monitors displaying security cameras all over the sanctuary, mainly in and around certain dinosaur enclosures and off-limits facilities. There were also maps displaying icons of dinosaurs and other organic and inorganic entities in San Diego Dinosaur Sanctuary, as well as a large, detailed world map. The map of the United States displaying certain information. For the past year, Costa Rican authorities have reported a small number of unusual neurological cases. At first, they resembled a disorder once seen among the Fore people of Papua New Guinea, known as Kuru. It isn't caused by a bacterium or a virus. It comes from prions, which are misfolded proteins capable of triggering degenerative conditions in organic life. She glanced at Wilson. You know how eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells contain organelles, membrane bound in the former, non membrane bound in the latter? And how viruses are far simpler, lacking cytoplasm, nuclei, ribosomes, or any real organelles at all? Wilson nodded cautiously. Yes, somewhat. Albeit microbiology is my specialty, but I follow you. Rivera continued. Well, prions are even simpler. They're not alive in the conventional sense, but when ingested, they can disrupt normal protein structures in the body, causing severe neurological decline. In rare cases, this can manifest in symptoms like tremors, unpredictable emotional responses, and loss of coordination. Thankfully, these recent Costa Rican cases have been contained. Her voice lowered. But. Oh, sorry, guys. Just a win. Not sure if you heard that. But here's the unusual part. Investigations trace the source not to human contact, but its contaminated dinosaur remains washed ashore from Isla Sorna. According to InGen's old files, some of Site B's animals carried a prion like condition the handlers once referred to the DX virus. It functioned very much like the animal disease known as BSE or mad cow disease in cattle. Rivera tapped the glass on the console, pulling up a restricted file. The so called DX virus in dinosaurs produced a range of symptoms: rapid weight loss, reddish eyes, confusion, erratic behavior, tumors, bloating, seizures. For the animals, it was nearly always fatal. Records showing it's been quietly present in Sorna's population for years. It's still one of the leading natural threats to their survival. Michael Crichton, you're only getting me fucking demonetized. YouTube, please do not demonetize this video. This is just Jurassic Park slash Jurassic World. Do not demonetize this. It's pure fiction. Please, I'm being as careful as I can. Do not demonetize this. Please. Whatever you do, do not demonetize this. YouTube, please don't. Wilson frowned. If this condition is so lethal, why hasn't it already wiped out every living dinosaur on Sorna? And how could it cause human cases of being contagious? Vera leaned slightly closer. From what we've learned, its transmission is inefficient. It spreads primarily through direct feeding or scavenging, which means it burns out in small clusters rather than sweeping across entire populations. As for humans, the barrier between species and makes infection nearly impossible. Only in very rare extreme cases of exposure does anything even resembling transmission occur, which explains why the Costa Rican reports remain limited. Angelina tapped casually at one of the glowing monitor screens, flipping through the camera feeds like she was channel surfing. A grin tugged her at her lips. Huh, fancy security system you got here. Suddenly, Ethan stormed over, his voice rising in alarm. Hey! What the hell are you doing? You can't just be poking around off limits equipment like that. Angelina leaned back in her chair, unfazed. Relax, it's just a screen. And honestly, says the guy whose company leaves behind piles of technological junk. My rig at home is cleaner, faster, and a hell of a lot more organized than this place. Lucas groaned, rubbing his forehead. Angie, please, can you at least try to respect the people who actually built this place? It's not your bedroom setup. She shrugged, eyes still on the frozen camera feed. Alright then, Professor. What's this jungle shot supposed to be anyway? Ethan crossed his arms, jaw tight. That happens to be the Dilophosaurus paddock. 6 individuals live there, although they're out of sight right now. That caught Lucas's attention immediately, though Angelina just muttered something under her breath. Even pressed on, slipping into explanation. The males are striking animals, about 20 feet in length, 10 feet tall, with leopards like black and yellow spotted. They've got a pale green underside, and of course, distinctive twin crests, striped in red black. The females are smaller, more subdued in color off white or muted gray base tones, with darker striping and a creamy yellow underbelly, less showy, but just as lethal. Angelina finally stopped smirking. He Finn's voice grew sharper. And yes, they carry the infamous trait, the expandable frill. That's thanks to spliced DNA from neck-frilled lizards. They can spit out neurotoxic compounds, blinding prey temporarily, sometimes paralyzing. This is from the DNA of Naja cobra genuses, like the Indo-Chinese spitting cobra. It's effective for hunting or intimidation to scare off an opponent. Then the then the dialogue can tackle and devour its prey at its leisure. Lucas's eyes widened. That's incredible, like something out of a myth. Angelina didn't comment, this time crossing her arms and turning away. Even let out a frustrated sigh, shaking his head. Please, these animals aren't toys. So show some respect, please. For of attention, Fickens, Rivera stepped in with a cool, measured tone. Ethan, calm down. She's just a kid. She's a kid. Let's not start a fight over a monitor. Ethan glanced at Rivera, then exhaled, stepping back. Angelina gave the faintest smirk of victory, but wisely stayed silent. YouTube, please don't demonetize me either about the whole Dilophosaurus thing. Do not demonetize me, please. Don't do it.